Ryan here with Dark Rangers Inc. And today we're going to do part 2 of our Astro Pixel processor series. I just had my second call with Mabula, the creator of the tool, where we went through an entire processing workflow on my first monochrome data set within APP. I've since then been able to work with one of our community members, Michelle, on her HA03S2H beta Antlia filter set data using a one-shot color camera. So if you're using that, there are some awesome features using tab 0 that I didn't go over in part 2 and makes it really easy to extract that signal, both leaving it in color if you'd like, or to extract it ready to go in monochrome. And then we'll also go through some of those earlier processing steps and make sure that you have a really simple way to perfect your stretch, clean up the background, get some great saturation, sharpness, contrast, and even perfect your star size. All of those tasks that are kind of early on in the workflow and can be kind of time consuming and confusing, we're going to make it really fast and easy so that way you can get to the fun part a lot sooner. Now, in all transparency, I am still dialing in those final adjustments in Photoshop, but I find using APP allows me to get to that point much quicker. And if that's something that you want to explore, this is one you're not going to want to miss, and so stay tuned. All right, here we are in APP, and we're going to do a quick overview here, just enough to kind of get you started and give you an introduction to some of the tools. It would take, probably several episodes just in processing to get it perfect. And as somebody who is a little bit newer myself, had experience now with several images, and what I really want to showcase today is some of those stacking tools before we jump into the processing that I didn't talk about in the first one. And the first one is going to be tab 0, and this is really for folks that are using one-shot color cameras, especially with dual narrowband filters, and they want to get to a nice monochrome looking image like this HA that actually came from one-shot color and was able to look just like this directly from the stack. So standard algorithm is adaptive airy disk. What you want to do is go down to these dual narrowband options if that's what you're choosing and you want that SHO monochrome look. So we have HA03 color, which is just going to be an optimized color stretch for an HA03 or an S2H beta filter, because remember, they're both basically just red and then using blue and green to create the other channel. So you can use it with both. Now, Mabula is going to come up with an S2H beta option in here as well, but for now you can use this with both. So if you want it to come out as a single image but in mono, you choose this. And then the option that we're going to talk about today is to extract the HA and extract the O3. So what you do is you just load in all of your files and calibration for one of the filters, and then you're going to run it through. You could choose HA first, have it go ahead and spit this image out. And then when you go to do extract O3, you're not going to have to go through all the steps again. It's just going to go through step 5 and 6 because it's already done most of the work on the data. So even with both stretches kind of combined, it's still much faster than a single stretch in WBPP for me and the person this data came from. So thank you to Michelle. We actually went ahead and processed this in a one-on-one, and we had some fun using this tool, and it really got us to a decent result pretty quick. And that's really what I think this is the best application for, getting you to the point where you can get to those final touches really quick in whatever program you like to use. And so things like stacking and the color calibration, stretch, some of those initial things, getting the background cleaned up, shrinking the stars, all of that works really good in here. And that's what I want to run you through. So you do the HA03 extract on each one, and then you could do the same for your S2H beta filter. And then what we do is go into tools, and we would do combine RGB. So we're going to call this jellyfish. Then we're going to come over here and choose our palette. So we'll start with SHO Hubble 1, which is just a traditional Hubble combination. And then we just need to add our channels. So we're going to add our hydrogen alpha, and we'll hit OK. And now the nice thing is as it's adding this channels down here, you can add up to 9 channels. So if you want to do like HA-RGB, HAL-RGB, or any one of those, you can see there's a ton of different options, or you can even kind of choose your own. We'll just start with Hubble 1, but we're not committed to it. Then we can go to our sulfur 2. We're going to add that, and then just our, it says H alpha, but we know it's actually the O3, and then hit OK. So now we have our 3 channels down here, and you can see it's 100% green for HA, 100% red for S2, and 100% blue for oxygen 3. And we can just hit calculate. And this is just going to give us our very traditional SHO monochrome look. If you've done this image like I have very recently in monochrome, this is exactly what you're going to see. Now, let's say you want to bring out maybe a little bit more of some of the other colors. You want to balance it a little bit more. Well, we have different options. So a slightly more balanced is going to be Hubble 2, and you have to hit New Formula and then recalculate. You can see some of the greens gone away, some of the reds are starting to show through. You have SHO Hubble 3, even more of the orange. And if you want to, go ahead and click saturation here. You can go ahead and bump the saturation up just to kind of exaggerate it so you can really see the color palette. As you can see, when we bump it up, some of that blue 03 is coming out. This isn't a ton of data, so just keep that in mind. But I know a lot of you guys, you know, this is probably about 3 or 4 hours of data. And then Hubble Palette 4 is actually going to use the HA as a luminance layer as well. But you can actually do that by just choosing the L slider down here on any one of them. So if you don't want to use HA, maybe you want to use S2 for whatever reason, you can do that from 0 all the way to 100. But with Hubble 4, we'll hit New Formula. As you can see, it does the luminance at 75. And then we know when we add luminance, it's going to decrease the saturation a bit. So we'll recalculate. And as you can see, some of the orange is gone, but we do get some of the green starting to come out. If we bump that saturation up a little bit, we can see the nice orange with the blue and then some of the subtle green. Now, because this isn't a ton of data, I'm actually going to dial back the luminance a little bit. Let's try 35. So we'll kind of cut it in half. And when you actually change the sliders down here, you don't have to hit New Formula. In fact, if you do, it will default to whatever one is selected. So just hit recalculate. So there we go. It's not quite as bright and doesn't show some of the issues with noise quite as much. So once you've decided that that's what you want to do, just hit save. And then we'll do it as a 32-bit fit. And then it just adds it down here. And we kind of work in layers like you would in Photoshop. And then we're just going to hit cancel. And then we will go down there and double click, and then we'll pull it into session essentially. So we can go ahead and slide this over more if we want as well. So we have a little bit bigger screen to work with. We could, of course, just crop it right away, but it doesn't really affect much in here if we do that. But let's just go ahead and that way we can get rid of kind of those stacking artifacts. Kind of fine tune it with here. I want to get something like that. We'll hit crop, and then we will save that as our second layer. So now we've got our new cropped layer right there. Now, there are a couple different ways you could do this. You can go over here and start to manipulate the stretch, contrast, saturation, highlights, all of that. Or you can go and kind of clean the image up first like you do in PixInsight. So the nice thing about this is everything stays linear until this stretch box is checked and you hit save. So we're always in linear. But the nice thing is all these changes that we're making, these previews, once we hit save, it goes from a preview to the real thing. So you don't have to worry about like doing it all with an STF and then still having to stretch it. If you like this stretch, like, you're done. You just hit save on with the stretch checked and that's it. I'll go through the different stretches in a second, but first let's go ahead and calibrate the star colors, which is actually going to calibrate the stars themselves as well as the overall color, just like SPCC. Now, when you do calibrate star color, it's also going to make you do background calibration first. So like basically having DBE rolled into it, and remove the light pollution gradients. So those are all separate options if you want to do them one at a time, or you can just calibrate the star color and it will ask you which one you want to do first. We'll go ahead and calibrate the background. And then just like DBE, you're going to pick some points. It doesn't matter if you have stars. You just want to make sure there is no nebula, and you really don't need to get too crazy with that. And I'm going to hit calculate. Hit OK and save. It's going to create a new layer. All right, and now for the star calibration, we can manipulate it like you can with everything else in APP, which is really nice. So I want to go ahead and select an area. I'm just going to select like right here where there's no nebula, but a good chunk of stars, and hit recalculate. As you can see, it has those same kind of plots like you get with SPCC. And just like SPCC, it can change your image. So it's kind of color corrected it back to the true Hubble palette. So if you don't want that, you can just choose, like I said, to go in and do it one at a time. So I'll go ahead and save that because I'm okay with this look. And we'll save it. If you didn't want to do that because you don't like it going kind of back to the green, although there is some more interesting orange in here and we still do see the blue, I kind of like this look. I think it's kind of cool. You could just do the remove light pollution and calibrate background without doing the star correction, just like you can in PixInsight. So doing SPCC doesn't always give you the changes you want, and then we often don't do it with Narrowband. But you can here, as you can see, my stars are all nice and white or blue or slightly yellowish, so they're much more natural stars, and it affects the overall color of the nebula as well. So now what we can do is go over here and kind of fine tune some of these things. The B is for the black point. I would recommend not messing with that. I think he is going to fine tune these a little bit, but right now they're very powerful, and even a little bit of a bump will make the image kind of all the way black or all the way white. Same with the white point. If you do get into trouble, like let's say I do bump this over and all of a sudden my image goes white, I just reset it and just choose whatever stretch you want again, and it will bring you right back. So no harm, no foul there. And then with the different stretches, if you click the question mark, it will tell you what the different things mean with all of the actual sliders over here, not just the stretch, but it'll specifically go over what the stretch is. So the 15% BG, and then we have 10 and all the way up to 20 and 30 is the background. So the background percentage is at 15. 5 sigma is like how wide the data swath is going to be. So basically what we have here. And then the 2.5 base just kind of bumps it up, and see how we're kind of right up against the edge. Just kind of bumps the whole image up by a couple percentage points. It's not going to make a super big difference though. So you can kind of just go through. And the nice thing is it's like having STF with a bunch of different presets, and then we can fine tune it, and then that will actually be our stretch. So we can try, let's try 5 sigma with a 2.5 base. It's a little bit too dark for me. Let's try the 3 sigma with no base. Yeah, I really like that. Let's try the 2.5 base. That might be too light. Yeah, it didn't make much of a difference. Just kind of bumped up the background a little bit, which we don't want because, again, we don't have a ton of data. Yeah, that kind of makes the highlights pop a little bit more, but keeps the background similar. And then we can dial that in here with the stretch. So I can go to the right if I want to drop it down a little bit. And the one thing I forgot to tell you guys about is to click on the 3. And now you can see it says 3 to 4 instead of 1 to 2. That's going to make it a lot more of a subtle change. We'll go ahead and reset it real quick. So if you do what it was, which is 1 and 2, it's between 0 and 1. So basically 0 to 100. If I go to 3 and 4, now we're at like 3 decimals out, and now I can do a much more subtle 00022. It just makes it slightly darker. And I can go to 0.18, which is what it was. And then let's say like 0.00014, and it's going to make it brighter. I kind of like it right, yeah, somewhere in this area. And then BA, same thing. I'm going to adjust that a little bit. We'll just slide it all the way to the right so you can kind of see what it does. It's going to brighten up that background. So we'll go back to the left. Yeah, I'm going to go all the way to the left on it and just get it to where it was. We have HL, which is highlight. So if we kind of zoom in on the star, and let's say I go all the way over to 250, we'll see that that just kind of dims it down a little bit. We don't really want to do that too much, but maybe a little bit. So I'll go to like 70, where it just kind of cuts down some of the really bright highlights. We'll probably be able to see it in here more as well. Let's go back to 0. Let's see what this looks like. Yeah, just a little bit brighter highlights. And then if it's getting a little too bright for you, you can kind of go between 0 and 250 to dim it down. We have, of course, saturation, which we've already messed with. We can see maybe what 45 looks like. It's probably going to be a little too strong, perhaps. Yeah, that's a little too neon. Let's go for something like 38. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. We were at 35. Yeah, let's go 37. And then saturation threshold is basically where the color starts to kick in. So if I drop it down to, let's say, all the way to 0, it's going to introduce more color into the background below that 0.15. If I go to like 0.15, that should keep it out of the background, but only allow it into the image. It was at 0.25. So now we probably could drop the saturation a little bit because it kind of brought more back in since we dropped it from 0.25 down to 0.15, meaning now it's in 85% of the image. We have sharpening that we'll leave towards the end because it's the most processor intense. Think Blur Exterminator. It takes a few seconds. And then we have contrast. Same thing. I'm going to just give it a little adjustment here. See if it does much. Not much. And the nice thing is with some of these tools, it is very subtle, which is good, because you don't sometimes want a huge bump in something like contrast. You want it to be something that you can, just fine tune a little bit at a time. So this 0.08 looks pretty good. Maybe go to the left a little bit. Yeah, there we go. I like that. So now what we can do, we'll go over 2 more steps and then just kind of wrap it up. Because again, it's, just to kind of get you started. We have the star reducer. So I'm going to go ahead and hit yes. And now we've got the correction radius, which you only need to adjust if you see kind of like an outline to where the star was shrunken, if we need to bump that up. 1.0 seems to be good for minor reduction, so I'll just leave it there. You can correct the halo as well. I'm just going to reduce the star size down to, let's say, 75%. And then I can also drop down the peak intensity if that's like, whoa, it's a little too much. We'll drop it down to like 90% and then hit calculate. And then we'll just kind of see here what it does overall. So this would kind of be like Blur Exterminator if you combine this with the sharpening tool. And we'll just kind of see what 70%, 75% looks like. We'll see what that does. So there you go. Did a pretty nice job. I think 75 looks pretty good. Maybe try 70. Just drop it down a little bit more. Now the halos is obviously not going to fix a monster halo like this. That's going to be, kind of clone stamp level. I actually liked it a little bit more at 75. And then we can kind of zoom in. I don't see any weird artifacts around the stars from the reduction. So I think we're good with the 1.0. And then the last tool I want to show you after we go ahead and save this as a new layer is going to be the selective color, which we are obviously used to from not only PixInsight, but also Photoshop. And then open this guy up. Okay, there we go. And just like the selective color adjustment in Photoshop or PixInsight works the same way. You choose your drop down. The nice thing I like about this one is it allows you to pick a low and high threshold. So right now it's saying the background is 0.0065. So if you want to protect the background a little bit more, I could go maybe to 0.01, but I'll leave it kind of where it's suggesting for now. And then also it has the opposing color, or basically what it's going to emphasize. So with red, we know that usually it just says cyan, magenta, or yellow. Now, if you use the tools long enough, you know that if you pull the cyan to the left or take away the cyan, it's going to reveal more red. But here it actually says it. You have to the right, it's going to be cyan. To the left, it's going to be red. So if we want to bring back some of that red that the color correction kind of fixed, we can go, let's say, -30. And then if we want it to be a little bit more red instead of orange, we can bump a little bit of magenta. And then let's just go ahead and calculate those adjustments. So there you go. It just kind of subtly brought that out more. Let's say maybe I want to do it in the yellows as well. So we'll bump that up. And then I'll also increase the yellow a little bit, which will help it with some saturation and give it just a little magenta to kind of warm it up and bring it into the orangish red a little bit more. So let's add that. There we go. See, now we're getting closer to that kind of look that we had from the beginning. I kind of like the green with the subtle red, but I know a lot of you guys like, more of this overall look that I was able to get with my monochrome one as well. With green, same thing. We could go either to the right with cyan and make it more of a blue-green, or to the left and introduce some more red. Let's just see what that looks like. I don't know if I'm going to like that. And then Yeah, let's just try that. Let's see what the removing the red from the green does, or adding red to the green. See, I think we're starting to kind of lose, you know, the nice look of the green. I'm actually going to add a little cyan now. Yeah, I actually like that. It kind of brought out this blue-green transition here. And actually, if we go negative on the yellow, we know that that will add blue as well. So let's do that. Let's bring the greens more into the blue space. Yeah, there we go. I like this area now is more interesting along the edge. And then the blue, if we go to the left with the yellow slider, it will increase it a bit. So we can add a little bit more blue into here. I don't want to add cyan because it's already looking a little kind of blue-green, so I'm actually going to take away a little cyan and calculate that. And just get more of a true blue that's a little bit more prominent. Now, these are pretty subtle adjustments. I mean, if I wanted to, you know, really, you know, make a really big change, I could go -1. And then there isn't a lot of blue in here, but you can see now it really pumped up that blue. And I actually don't necessarily hate that, but I'm going to go a little bit less than that, like negative, let's go -40. There we go. That's a little bit more subtle. So if you're finished there, you could hit save. And then there you go. If you were happy with this, you could have this stretch checked and then just go ahead and hit save. And now it's going to go from nonlinear to linear. You can see it automatically goes to a TIFF, which is 16 bits that I can then import to whatever program I want, which for me would be Photoshop. You can choose the different color palette, Adobe or sRGB V2. Internet online is all sRGB, so it's not a bad idea. And then the DPI is really only if you're going to print. So we'll hit OK. And now I have a file ready to go in Photoshop and do the final touches on. So hopefully that helps. You can do all sorts of different color combinations using the combine RGB. All of those difficult things. HARGB to me is still one of the most difficult things to get right. And so I'm going to get some HA data to add to my LRGB that I have on M81 and M82 that I showed you guys in the Pleiades 111 video, and try that out. And I'll post that on my Instagram. Please follow me on Instagram. I do more small updates that aren't like worth making a full video on, but like if new equipment comes or, you know, any of the photos I'm doing, check that out. It'll keep you more up to date and it'll give you some more post video results on some of this stuff that you might not see if you just tune into the YouTube channel. So guys, hopefully this is helpful. Let me know if you want to do even a third video that's more advanced, maybe in a few weeks or a month from now, after you get used to part 1 and part 2. And until the next one, guys, as always, clear skies.